This is video 7 of the D4 series, and it first wraps up the Nimzo and then goes to some other subjects of D4 knight f6. We were at exactly this point where black recaptured with a knight on d5. Now it's an important moment because c3 is hanging here, and the next move is really essential. White cannot really protect this pawn in a comfortable way. He would like to do so, to protect and keep the center, but there's no decent move to do so. Just for instance, let's say white plays something like bishop d2 in order to follow up with e4. Then black just grabbed the pawn here. f3, of course, you always need to keep in mind that there's a check. And other moves have been tried. For instance, queen d3 has been tried. I would favor it of Shirov's, but this seems to be okay for black. Yeah, the main move is dc5 here, which might look a bit awkward at first because it really breaks up white's pawn structure. But on the other hand, you need to keep in mind that white actually obtained the two bishops, and the two bishops, of course, like open lines. And in this case, it's really the best move you can play in the position. Now black almost in all games goes for queen a5. Other possibility here is f5. Very specific line. You're only likely to face it versus people who really studied this in some detail. Idea is to actually fight against e4, because the simple approach like e4, fe, fe, black has got the annoying check here, and here's the old trick, getting the rook on h1. So white needs to react somehow. And there are different approaches. I think there's more than one approach that's interesting. One could be e4, f takes e4, and queen c2. This is one idea. And I think there's also some other tries on f5, for instance. I think also knight h3 is a possibility, but I'm not 100% sure. I think the main move is indeed e4, and then putting the queen there to try to recapture later. I think white should be slightly better in this line. Queen a5 is played most often here. Now e4, and now black has got a choice where to put the knight. One move that's actually really bad is capturing here, because queen e2 puts up nasty pins, threatening bishop b2, and also keep in mind g7 is hanging, so this is very bad for black. And also black cannot capture on c3 with the queen, simply because of bishop d2. So this is very nice position. Black now has to decide if he goes to e7 or f6. It leads to the same structure. There's some differences, but it's the same pawn structure. Let's have a look at knight e7. Now white goes simply bishop e3. He doesn't mind that c3 is hanging. The c3 pawn is not that important in this position. It's more important to, of course, to keep the c5 pawn, because this pawn, while being structurally weak, also has got some very useful functions. It serves as a help for putting a piece on d6, which is a weak square in black's camp, and also one move that black often plays for is b7, b6, to get some space here. And this, of course, it's not prevented by the pawn, but it's working against b7, b6. So here black just castles. It's really a bad idea to grab this pawn, white happily puts the king on f2. It's a nice square for the king, you don't need to castle. And you will simply win a couple of tempi later with white. Maybe knight e2 or other moves to gain time on the queen. So black just goes for development. Now queen b3. Yeah, no, highlighting you've got two bishops and you've got an extra pawn. It's not the greatest pawn ever, but you've got an extra pawn. And white's idea is to restrict black further, put some piece on d6 maybe, or play on the queen side with the space advantage. Black now retreats to c7. We're following a game here which was played, I think, last year. Was it last year? It's not too long ago. Maybe it was a 2011 game of Vishy Anand versus Wang Hao, the top Chinese player, also rated far above 2700. White went bishop b5, knight ec6. I just want to illustrate a very nice idea that Anand put into effect in this game. b4, e5, castles, bishop e6. And this was played before this game, so white's next move is really a theoretical novelty. And what Anand played here is knight to d4, which is really an awesome move. Well, it just puts a piece on a defended square, defended by a pawn. It's really immensely strong. I think well, black doesn't have much opportunity to deny the sacrifice, because if he doesn't take, white might even go knight f5 to d6. If you look at this position, white's problem piece is actually the knight on e2. It doesn't have much to do here, because d4 and f4 is covered. Knight g3, it's also not a great idea, but this is just a great move. Black took the knight, and then cd4, and now white has just a great position. It's got two pawns. Remember, you have an extra pawn to begin with in this line, and now you got two pawns, healthy pawns now, and the d pawn is just immensely strong, threatening to really go through the whole board here. White still has got the two bishops, and black has got well, undeveloped pieces, or pieces that are very likely to be pushed back further. Anand won a very, very nice game here. I think it is very much recommended to study some games to get some idea about this structure, because I think this whole line with dc5 will occur pretty often. People actually very often know that d5 is the best move, or the most common move, and will play this, but they often lack further knowledge. So my experience is that you very often actually get this structure, which I already briefly mentioned in the last video, and it really pays off to study this structure as well, because you get it very often. And if you do some serious study here, it really pays off, because white very often gets really strong attack going later with the mobile center e4. Yeah, note that this whole setup with bishop d3 and knight e2 and f3, it's a bit similar to the setup we discussed against the Queen's Gambit exchange variation. So the idea of this repertoire is a little bit to get similar ideas and structures. So very often white uses the idea of f3 and push e4 later. It is also what attracted me to suggest the line f3 in the first place, because it's a little bit similar in ideas to the other lines. Yeah, okay, I think really recommended to study this structure happening after black captures with the pawn, and then study this structure with the broken with the broken white pawns, but with the extra pawn, and have a look at typical middle games. Maybe you're even lucky to repeat Anand's piece sacrifice, with knight d4. Actually, in this line, knight d4 is not a completely new idea. It has been played in similar positions before, so it might be possible if you look a little bit more closely at some lines to find similar ideas in other move orders. I think it really pays off to study this line. It's pretty aggressive, and it's not so much well known in comparison to, for instance, Queen c2. I think against Queen c2 everyone has got something worked out because it is played so often, and this I think well, people have some general idea, but they don't know it really in much detail. Well, I think it pays off to study games. I already mentioned this, and well, I think really a lot of top players have played f3. One player I also like to mention who's really has got huge experience there is another Russian player, Sergei Volkov. I think he's a two-time Russian champion, always rated something 2650 or similar, and he played this line, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 times, really lots of games, and it's interesting to study his games because he's a very fighting player, very uncompromising, and sometimes very original. So it's maybe interesting to borrow, so to say, some ideas that he used in his games. Yeah, I think that's it for the Nimzo, and further videos, of course, will address other lines like King's Indian, Grünfeld, Benko or Volga Gambit. There's a lot of other stuff to discuss, but I think the Nimzo is really an essential part. As I mentioned, f3 is my suggestion, but if you dislike the kind of structures, of course, yeah, you are free to choose other moves, as there are no huge interferences with other lines suggested in the repertoire. Yeah, thanks for watching.